Welcome to the Inspired Living with Autoimmunity podcast, the podcast for high achievers who want to stay sharp, focused, and full of energy despite their diagnosis. With your host, National Board Certified Functional Medicine Health Coach, Julie Michelson, where Julie helps you take your power back from autoimmunity. And now here's your host, Julie Michelson.
Welcome back to the Inspired Living with Autoimmunity podcast. I'm your host, Julie Michelson, and today we're joined by James Schmachtenberger, co-founder and CEO of the Neurohacker Collective, a company focused on making groundbreaking products for health and well-being through complex system science. James brings his lifelong focus on using business and innovation to affect large-scale change for the benefit of humanity. Today's conversation focuses on senescent cells, or zombie cells, and how using senolytics may be the anti-aging key you are looking for. James, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. It's a delight to be here.
I would love for you to share a little bit of your story with people. Before I hit record, I was kind of, to me, you're a celebrity. But I want people to really kind of just get an idea of how you got to be making the contribution you are and what brought you to this world.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And it's funny because there's of course so many different parts to the story, right? But I guess I'll just say, like, the holistic medicine has been kind of a life passion for me from very, very young. My mom has a disease called interstitial cystitis, and she had participated in a drug trial when I was like 5 years old, and it nearly killed her. And she ended up in the hospital for, I think, like 3 months, and was very close to death. Even if she was going to recover, was never supposed to walk again. And like, she was a pro ice skater, prior to this.
Oh, wow.
And so, obviously huge contrast. And when she was in the hospital, somebody had given her a book on Ayurvedic medicine, and she had nothing else to do. So she devoured the book, ended up finding solutions, and, kind of eventually left the hospital and went down this natural health track, got, dramatically better. And a year later was competing in ice shows again.
Wow.
And so, like, that was a kind of key turning point for, I think, me and my whole family, where it's like, okay, medicine in its traditional form has incredible applications, and it deeply lacks in some key areas. And
Yes.
Taking a more cutting edge, more alternative kind of approach can oftentimes do as much, if not more, than kind of allopathy can. So that, really set a tone for the rest of life. But I think, as it pertains kind of like to why Neurohacker, right? Why do we start Qualia? That story really was when I was 18, I was in school at a vocational college studying alternative medicine and psychology. And right around the time I was graduating, the owner of the school, the founder of the school, had said he wanted to semi-retire. He still wanted to teach, but he didn't want to run the business anymore. So in my 18-year-old hubris, I was like, oh, I can do this. So I went out and raised money, which God knows why anyone gave me money at that age. And I bought the school. And it was phenomenal.
Amazing.
I was like incredibly passionate about the work. It was definitely what I wanted to be doing with my life, but I had no skills. Like, I didn't even know how to balance a checkbook.
Sure.
So here I am, all of a sudden, like 18-year-old kid, doesn't know diddly, and now I'm running a school. And so I made up for the lack of skill with just pure work and, 20, 22-hour days, take a short nap.
American dream.
What's that?
The American dream.
Exactly. I think we might need to update that dream.
Yeah, there is a better way, hence Neurohacker.
It definitely took me some years to learn it, but I do not recommend pushing that hard, even at that age where you're almost bionic. But
Or think you are.
or at least think you are. But yeah, so I after about 3 years of just ridiculous workload, at 21, I had severe burnout, and I started having massive brain fog. My memory stopped working. I started going into depression, which I was doing this work that I was deeply passionate about, and I was depressed. So then I started having an existential breakdown, like couldn't make sense of life. So I went on my healing journey, and being in the field, I was fortunate to get exposed to a bunch of things, and tried all kinds of stuff. But there was one therapy particularly that just changed my world. And it was, I ended up going down to Mexico and doing this sort of experimental intravenous therapy, that at the time I had no idea what it was. Later on, I realized it was high dose NAD and a combination of a bunch of amino acids. But I did 3 days of this drip for like 9 hours a day, and it changed everything. And not in like a subtle way, right? And I went in depressed, unable to think, unable to retain thoughts. And coming out, I not only had all of my cognitive function back, but I was experiencing a sense of clarity that I had never experienced before. I had a sense of like capacity and motivation that was unlike anything that I had ever felt. And then the thing that was super remarkable for me was my sense of empathy shot through the roof. And it became a situation where it's like I couldn't think about what I wanted to do in the world and not immediately be aware of the implications of that on the rest of the world and the people around me. And so as I was sitting there, I was like, holy shit, what would happen if this became available at scale, right? If we could build something that would allow hundreds of thousands, millions of people to become drastically more intelligent, more confident, more capable, but also more empathetic, so that they had an intrinsic motive to use that competency and that intelligence, not only for personal gain, but for the greater good.
World changing.
So this was the concept, right? And initially I actually tried to partner with the doctor who created that IV therapy. We were going to open clinics. Unfortunately, like 3 weeks into that project, he became super ill and passed away.
Oh my gosh.
And his research went away with him. So here I was with this beautiful vision and no path. And so then I spent several years running other businesses and doing other things, interviewing all the top neuroscientists, neurobiologists, chemists, formulators. And everyone was like, yeah, this is a great concept. It's not doable. And I just couldn't let it go. Right?
Thank you for not letting it go.
Yeah, so it took me a long time, but eventually I ended up convincing my brother to partner with me. And I had tried for years and he kept saying no. But he's, a lot of people have probably seen him on podcasts, but he's one of the rare geniuses of the world. And his background is in complex system science. And I knew that if we could apply complex system science to the study of physiology, we could do things that the world had sort of never seen before in terms of healing and health optimization. And so eventually he agreed to partner. We dove into this 2-year full-on R&D process, both sort of developing a scientific model based on complex system science, but also developing the first product, which was Qualia, right? Our broad spectrum cognitive enhancement. And that was essentially the birth of Neurohacker. Was a lofty vision, some semblance of tenacity that eventually panned out, and an obscene amount of research. And luckily it's been a pretty extraordinary ride and process, and given the opportunity to help a lot of people, and hopefully more to come.
Which is incredible. I was telling you before we started, I have been a longtime fan of the company, an early adopter, if you will. And I always say my start in biohacking that led me to functional medicine, the two worlds they really are, to me, ideal is it's both, right? The best functional medicine docs are pulling from biohacking, and if you're biohacking properly, you're utilizing functional medicine, and so there's a synergy there. And so I love, when I first found Qualia, the mind, I did, other than my group of biohacker, like I didn't know anybody else taking it. I didn't, nobody else had heard of it. And so I love now, how the company has grown. I know you have, I would love to do an interview for each of the products. I did share, I am, not only do I love the contribution that the company is making by truly creating these products, with not even just the science you pull together, but your process of getting stuff to market and testing. And you do have a group of us that we're willing to be guinea pigs and try. There's a trust level there so that you guys can tweak and continue to improve your products, which is amazing. We're going to jump. So I say anybody who's like, what is this Neurohacker Collective and what is Qualia? Look it up. I just learned from a presentation this past weekend. I never even thought about it. Like, what is the definition of Qualia? And I was like, oh, this makes so much sense. If somebody wants to know, well, like, how does a nootropic and a sleep enhancer and a senolytic all tie together? Like, how is this one company? But if you go back to Qualia, which is the experiential quality of what it's like to be you, it's like, oh, this is it, right? Like, it's best mind, but this is, so thank you from the bottom of my heart for what you guys are doing and how you're doing it. And I want to jump into this, your newest product, which I really do. For me, obviously, your first product changed my life because when did that come out? I don't even know how long I've been taking it.
Qualia Mind was our first one, and that came out in late 2016.
Okay, that makes sense.
Entry into the world. Yeah.
Yeah.
A little bit now.
Yeah, and so I know that's a commitment. So I've been using that ever since then.
Awesome.
But I really, so that I know each product has the ability to change your life. I always say, it all comes down to, if we're sleeping better, that quality of sleep, getting your mind to work. But I'm really, because of even the functional medicine piece, excited about your latest and greatest. So let's talk a little bit about senescence and senolytics and what this is. Why are we even talking about it on an autoimmunity targeted podcast? Why does, because you don't make products for 3 people, it's really something that can enhance everybody's life.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's interesting because this whole area of cellular senescence, is so new. Most people that are listening right now have probably never even heard of.
They don't even know. So let's start right there. What is senescence?
Yeah. So basically, healthy cells are supposed to be able to continue to divide and reproduce, right? And then once they get to a point where they no longer have the ability to continue to divide and reproduce, then they're supposed to die off, right? That's a process called apoptosis. And that's how the body sort of operates healthy. But what ends up happening as we age and as we have more stressors and poor nutrition and various different things, is that oftentimes cells will become what's known as senescent, or commonly it's referred to as zombie cells.
Yeah,
right? And
which to me is like the perfect visual for people to understand when you say zombie cells.
Yeah, I mean, it makes perfect sense when you actually get to understand how it works, right? So basically, a cell will get to a place where it's no longer able to divide and reproduce, but it doesn't die off. And so it's sort of alive, but it's not really doing anything. It no longer is able to do much in the way of energy output. It doesn't have a lot of the beneficial traits that a cell normally does. So it's just sort of pseudo living, taking up resources. But part of why it's also called a zombie cell is it's not just the problem of it taking up resources and not providing benefit. It's also that it emits certain proteins that turn the other cells around them into senescent cells. right? So in the same way that a zombie will try to eat your brains and it turns you into a zombie, right? These senescent cells emit these chemicals, which then turn other ones into it. And that whole process drastically speeds up the aging process. And so this is essentially what, cellular senescence is. And then the term senolytic, which we'll be talking about a little bit, are the compounds that are researched for being able to kill off senescent cells, right? Being able to allow them to actually finish their life cycle and die off and make space for new healthy cells to be able to reproduce.
Which I love the simple, I'm not a scientist. And so when
I'm not either. I just play one on TV.
Yeah, I know I always say that I'm not a doctor and I don't play one on TV. But if you think of, it's a cleanup, right? Like this is what we're talking about. And I like that to take the zombie thing all the way, that it's not joke, because I always kind of thought of it. And so I learned a lot at the Qualia presentation this last weekend, because I always thought of it kind of as just the first piece, right? I know we get these senescent cells and we want them gone, but they're not dying off. They're taking resources. I think of it as, I have a lot of house plants and I love to garden. And so the pruning, right? We want to get rid of those dead and dying leaves so that the rest of the plant is getting the good stuff. But then when you understand this kind of thing, I think of it as like building a cellular army. We don't want more and more of our cells just hanging out, grabbing buddies. And I want to, just for the audience's sake, because some people may think like, I'm not interested in anti-aging. Like, I just want to feel well.
Right.
I say this all the time. To me, the things we think of, the negative pieces of what we think of as aging is all, in my opinion, my humble just said, I'm not a scientist or a doctor. But it's all inflammation, right? That's why my favorite word is inflammaging. And I wish I could figure out who actually coined it, because I've never been able to find out who the first person was to say that in public. And to me, autoimmunity is just further down the spectrum on that expression of inflammation. And so by focusing, anything we can do to reduce inflammation, to help reverse the aging process or add some grace to it, is also the same things we need to be doing to improve our autoimmune symptoms and live fuller lives.
I mean, this is sort of the beauty of the domain of like anti-aging research, right? Which this senolytics falls squarely within that. Is it's not anti-aging exclusively in the ways that people typically think about that, which is either how do you live longer or how do you look better for longer, right? Like these are both key things, and of course they're good goals to pursue.
Well, they're related in a way, but there's the piece of the thing that fell out of my mouth on a podcast that I was like, I'm writing that down, is I want to live young until I die. Like honestly, it's not about, it used to be about how long I live, because I didn't think I'd live to see 50. Now that I'm 53 and I feel younger than I did at 34, like I just want to live like this until I'm done. Like that's what we're talking about, is that quality of life.
Yeah, I mean, people get so focused on lifespan, right? How many years you're on the planet, and that's awesome. But like what we tend to focus more on is what we refer to as health span, right?
Yes.
How many years are you on the planet and thriving in health? Because even if we can develop technologies that allow for you to add, 5, 10, 20 years to your life, but those last years are bedridden in pain, that's not actually a goal that most people are that attracted to.
No, nor should they be.
Add some years that are thriving health, or don't even worry about adding years, just improve the quality of life during the time that you're here. And the beauty of so much of the stuff in the anti-aging space is like a lot of that work is being done at the cellular level, right? That's one of the key things here in cellular senescence, right? So when you're improving health at the cellular level, you're essentially going to improve everything, because it is like the fundamental building block. And so yes, there's of course things you want to focus on depending on what your needs and conditions are to address specific symptoms, to address specific parts of the body. But when you can improve cellular health overall, there's just this net benefit across everything. You feel better, you have more energy, more clarity of thinking, you heal faster, like virtually everything.
You become a better human, which is goes back to your story of, you're empathetic, it becomes about contribution and not just survival. And so, that's why we're having this conversation today. I'm excited about. So let's talk a little bit about senolytics and talk about how this is different, right? I just said I've been using your first product since I found it, which I believe was right away in 2016. Definitely by 2017, but I think it might have been 2016. I take that on a regular basis. And so let's kind of talk about this cycle of, guide us through this amazing kind of cutting edge, being involved in the anti-aging world. It's new, but it's not new, right? Like this idea, and there are prescriptions that have been used. There are,
sure.
What's new is that this is accessible and effective. And so people can take charge. I'm all about creating power, right? Empowering people. So let's talk about the actual product and kind of not the science behind it, because we don't have enough time, and I don't know if I have I do have the brain power. I took my mind this morning, but it's very different. And I think that the way you guys help us understand why we're taking it and then how it works, it just makes sense.
Yeah. So I guess if we dive in, there's so cellular senescence is one of what's known as the hallmarks of aging. Right? There's 9 hallmarks of aging, and these are the key areas that cause the aging process. And there's extensive research going into all of them. Some, the world understands better than others. Some we have more tools to be able to affect than others. But things cellular senescence is one of them. Mitochondrial function is one of them. Stem cell exhaustion is one of them. Telomere length, right? So there's all these different hallmarks. There's for Neurohacker, there's 2 primary ones that we've dove deeply into so far, which is cellular senescence and mitochondrial function. Right. So we have another product called Quality of Life, which is this just phenomenal mitochondrial function product. Helps to improve cellular energy output, cellular metabolism, dramatically boosts NAD levels, all kinds of cool stuff. As we move into cellular senescence, part of what makes this domain so exciting is it's ridiculously new. And so this is one of the first times in history where there's something available to actually have an impact here. So the field of cellular senescence has been researched for several decades now. We've known that these senescent cells exist, and we've known that they cause problems. But that was kind of the extent of what the research community understood. And there was never this understanding of, anything can be done about it. And that was some really breakthrough research that only happened in 2015, right? So this is super recent.
Yeah.
And it was predominantly from Mayo Clinic and from Scripps, where they began using, actually it was a drug trial with a drug called dasatinib, which is a cancer drug. But what they found was that when they were giving patients dasatinib and then biopsying the tissues, they were starting to see dramatically less senescent cells. And then there started to be some other research where they were using dasatinib and quercetin, which is a supplement that a lot of people probably have some familiarity with. And then you saw, an even greater decrease. And so it's only in the last, 7 years that there was any awareness that something could be done. And dasatinib definitely shows really promising results in this area, but it's also a pretty harsh drug that has serious consequences. And so that's where then the next stage of research started again of, what else could mimic some of these effects and do it with creating all the benefit, but without creating harm, right? And so then there started to be some studies with a number of other compounds, but particularly the two most researched, most known are fisetin and quercetin. And these are both, somewhat commonly available supplements, and all coming from plant extracts that show drastic decreases in the amount of senescent cells in the body. And then where the research has continued to evolve, and this is where we've been able to do some really, really interesting things, is so there's senescent cells in all of the different types of tissue in the body. And this is something that a lot of the research community isn't actually even paying attention to yet. But you have senescent cells in skin tissue and in muscle tissue, and different compounds end up being able to kill off senescent cells in different kinds of tissues more effectively. So there's really not that much on the market right now. Are usually only 1 or 2 ingredients, and so they're effective, but they're predominantly killing off senescent cells in particular tissue types and not necessarily addressing the whole body. And this is, as you know, like our approach is this whole systems approach, right? We're always looking to not just affect 1 or 2 narrow things, but how do we do this whole system upgrade? So we did this deep dive into research and found all of the compounds that had really meaningful backing for being able to address senescent cells in all the different tissues, and then put them all together, right? And so
what a concept.
Yeah. And I mean, and I understand why a lot of companies don't do it, because it does take dramatically more hours of research.
Sure.
And as you start using more ingredients, it's more expensive to produce. It's more complicated to actually run through machinery. There's lots of challenges, but for us, the goal has always been, how do we make the very best thing that can exist? And we'll figure out how to address the difficulties in getting there. And so it's just become this phenomenal product where people are showing tremendous benefit in really short periods of time, like kind of remarkably so.
Which is amazing and exciting. Oh, we had a little tech issue there.
This product's only been on the market for, I think, 3. Do we see?
No, we're good. Back? We're good. We're back.
Perfect.
So the product is new.
So the senolytic product is quite new. It's only been out 3 months or so. So we're still continuing to do all kinds of follow-up studies, but we did one study initially that was really compelling, where one of the key areas where senescent cells will show up that people will notice is in joint health. Right, as you start to have this buildup of these unhealthy senescent cells, it tends to create things like joint stiffness, pain, lack of mobility. So we did a study on that specifically, and what we found was, over the course of people doing this product 3 cycles, we found a 53% decrease in joint discomfort and a 51% decrease in difficulty doing regular tasks. And that's dramatic, right? Like, because this was a very short period of time. We're talking under 3 months. And for a lot of the people that were involved in the study, like, the challenges they had were fairly significant. And all of a sudden now there's half of that.
Which is amazing. This was a group in their 70s, yes?
It ranged.
Okay.
With all of our studies, we generally try to get a pretty healthy range of both, age, gender, everything.
Okay.
Yes, in this one we did err a little bit on the older side, because that's where you
get your symptoms,
most noticeable effects.
Yeah, and that's something I'm very big on, markers and tests where you can, and you mentioned it when you're talking about the earlier, studying. Right now, to truly see, what's going on with the cells, you're talking biopsies, and nobody's going to be going in, I'm trying this new supplement and I'm going to go in and get biopsied every 3 to 6 months to see what it's doing. But the remarkable thing is, as you mentioned already, just the improvement in quality of life and hitting. So it is noticeable for people.
Right.
You mentioned cycles, and I think this is so important to talk about. This is something that I think a lot of people aren't used to, as far as how you use the product effectively.
Yeah. That a few minutes ago when you talked about pruning, right? So with most supplements, people are used to the idea that you take them all the time, right? You take them every day, or you take them a few days a week. But when it comes to addressing senescent cells, the research actually shows that the best way to address them is what's often referred to as the hit and run approach, right? You do a large amount of the senolytic compounds for a very short period of time, and then you take a break, and then you do it again, right? So the senolytic product we developed it's essentially like a cellular cleanse. You do it 2 days on, and then wait a month, and then do it again. And it's very much like that pruning process, right? Like if you had a plant that had some yellowing or dying leaves, if you were to actually go and prune it every single day for just a little tiny bit, it would actually take up way more resources from the plant and be counterproductive versus allowing a little bit of time to pass for more yellowing, and then you go and you prune those leaves. And so it's that exact same process when you're talking about clearing out senescent cells. And I think this is one of the reasons people have also liked the product is, actually, as you and I were talking about before the interview started, so many people struggle with consistency.
Right.
You want to take supplements, they're going to have benefit, but do you build them into your lifestyle and remember to actually do it every day?
Right.
And so one of the cool things with the senolytic is you don't actually have to, right? You take it 2 days, and then you're off for a month, and then you take it again. And that's sort of like, that's the recommended approach. Some people will wait longer. It obviously depends on how much cellular senescence you think you have built up, how important it is to work on it. You can do 2 days and then wait 3 months, but the sort of ideal is this sort of like monthly cellular detox.
Yeah. Which is also, that's the coach in me is like, that works on the calendar. My dogs get an injection. I give them a supplement for their joints once a month, so just the beginning of the month, I'm already thinking like, oh, this will go, this will be my beginning to pay your mortgage and take your senolytic, which I love. One question that comes up a lot, I know, because I got to listen to the questions in the presentation last week, is about, additional behaviors or lifestyle adjustments of like, really, is this going to work if I'm just taking the supplements? Is there other things people should be doing to improve results or, have in mind of like, okay, if we're now aware, like we really want this cellular clean out and optimization, what else should we be doing?
Right. So, absolutely. There's key lifestyle factors, right? Like even in the word supplement, it means supplemental, right? It is to be added on top of other things. It is not to fundamentally replace.
So you don't take the Big Mac and then take the senolytic and eat the Big Mac. You don't take a Big Mac, I guess you eat it. It would be forced upon me, but so it's not something that's going to make up for an unhealthy lifestyle necessarily.
No, to a certain extent, the right supplementation can offset damage that you're doing from bad lifestyle habits. Sure. And that's not the goal, right? The goal is invest in yourself, invest in happiness, in health and vitality, do the right lifestyle things, and then add the right kinds of supplementations and technologies on top of that for even better effect. So yeah, across the board, the most important things that people can generally do for health is good quality sleep, good diet, good exercise. And in this regard, it is very similar, right? Quality sleep is one of the things that's most readily going to support the natural ability to clear out senescent cells.
Yes.
Because there's different ways it happens, but primarily it's an immune function, right? The immune system is designed to kill off senescent cells. But when it's overly taxed, it stops having the ability to do that as effectively. As we know, sleep has a massive impact on immune function. And then diet is key. And particularly in this area, I mean, there are certain types of foods, things that are high in polyphenols that are going to be really good. But one of the keys here is actually intermittent fasting, right? Having extended periods of time where you're not taking in calories is one of the things that's going to help trigger, well, both autophagy, but also the ability to clear up cellular senescence. So from a lifestyle perspective, key things would be, yeah, eat healthy foods high in polyphenols. So that largely means not overly processed
Not
and
the Big Mac.
colorful things.
Yeah.
And if you can and are willing to, experiment with intermittent fasting and get your sleep dialed in.
And I do look at this as such an up level as somebody who focuses on all of those things, not only in my life, but in the life of my clients. The intermittent fasting really, for me, changed my life. And that's a whole nother podcast, but it was a key piece. And one of the reasons I think fasting, whether it's, a fast or having some kind of intermittent fasting in your life, it is for, autophagy. And I think that there's where just experientially, I see that direct relation to reducing inflammation is remarkable.
Yeah.
And so I look at senolytic as like, oh my gosh, here's an up level. And the beauty is scientifically, even if you don't practice intermittent fasting, I mean, again, it's not an either or, ideally it's an and, but you're still going to get benefit. It's not like you have to take it and fast. We're just talking about, ways to be supporting the body ideally.
Yeah, I mean, that's sort of an ideal. It's not something that most people realistically are going to do because, like for those who aren't familiar, right, intermittent fasting, yeah, I mean, there's a bunch of different versions, but the kind of common popular version is you don't eat for 16 hours and then you eat within an 8-hour window of the day. Because at 16 hours is when this process called autophagy kicks in, which, if you're not familiar, autophagy is, the word actually translates to self-eating, but essentially it's where the body digests particular pieces of cells that are no longer healthy and functioning, and processes them out to improve overall health and cell function. And there's a close tie between senescence and autophagy. Actually, like most of the ingredients that are in our senolytic product have also quite a bit of evidence to support and increase autophagy. So though that wasn't the primary focus of this particular product, it is one of the likely secondary benefits. But yeah, intermittent fasting is essentially, you try to keep your eating within an 8-hour window. So let's say from noon to 8 p.m. And then outside of that, you try to not have any caloric intake. Now, black coffee is usually still okay within that because there's not really calories, and there's actually some compounds in there that support all of these processes. But generally it's, water during the rest of the time, and then you keep your meals within that window, and it has tremendous benefits. And if you're willing and able to do that, awesome. If not, that's cool too. Just try to make relatively good food choices. And the Big Mac is usually not one of those.
No, it's not even food. Let's be real. No, and I have to throw in my, and you did say it, but I'm going to highlight that eating window is not ideal for everybody. And it certainly doesn't mean that if you've never played with intermittent fasting, you should immediately, just go for that 8-hour window. But you find, and it may change. I mean, there was a period where I felt best when I ate one meal.
Yeah.
Like that was it just naturally, that's how we evolved. And it changes. So, listen to your body as well as you do it. You may have already answered this. I always love to give listeners, because generally there's a lot of, you could do this, you could do that, really great information and nuggets. But then I put you on the spot and ask you for that one step listeners can take today. And it certainly could be one of the things you already said, to start to really move the needle and improve their health.
It's always so hard to narrow
I
down
know.
something,
Just
right?
one. I have to pick one.
So I mean, it's interesting. If I was going to give one, it actually wouldn't be any of the three main things I mentioned, right?
I
I said
love
like,
it.
the keys are sleep, diet, exercise. But to me, those are all tools in the direction of what is most important, which is pursue that which makes you feel most alive. Right? And that can look like a million different things for somebody. For one person, it's singing, right? For another person, it's dancing. For another person, it's quality time with friends. For somebody else, it is, spending time in the kitchen and really devoting yourself to making healthy food and being present to it. And it honestly doesn't matter what it is. Whatever it is that moves you, that makes you light up, that makes you delighted, that makes you want to get out of bed in the morning, do more of that.
I
That
love that.
is the simplest side of approach to how to not just be healthy, but how to live a great life. And it's the thing that as a society, we suck at, right? We get so focused on all the things we have to do.
Back burner that all the time. Yeah.
Right. I mean,
there's your motivator to then do all the other things is when you're pursuing it's not the word you use, but joy. Like that's what drives us, which goes back to the qualia, right? This feeling the most like you, and it is so different.
Well, the beautiful thing with that is if you do that, you have way more energy and resources for everything else.
Yeah, it's fuel.
And it doesn't matter what makes you feel alive. If you move in that direction, you have a better outlook on life. You're almost inherently going to make better choices. You're going to choose to spend less time in relationships and dynamics that are stressful and painful. You're either going to get out of them or you're going to make better dietary choices.
Yes.
It's going to cross over into every other part of life.
The trickle down effect. Yeah. Amazing. Oh my gosh. So amazing. Where everything's going to be in the notes, but for those that just listen on the go, where's the best place to find you? They're like, I need to hear more from him.
I mean, best place is go to neurohacker.com. Right there, I have content on there, but we have a whole team of just amazing physicians, PhDs that are putting out all kinds of great content. Obviously, products are there. But we focus very heavily on research and product, but also on education.
Yes.
And so there's a lot of resources there to dive into, and not just in the domain of health, right? Like that is our core focus, but a lot of our content research is also oriented around sort of how to support a more healthy functioning civilization. Because it ties into why we started the business, right? That initial goal I talked about of, how do you make people more intelligent, more competent, and more empathetic? That empathy part was how do you drive better decision making in the world as a whole? So we also try to expose people to some of the things that would help create more understanding of what does the world need at scale. And then as you become healthier, as you become more capable, you get to devote more resources to your own life and your own happiness. But as we all know, contribution is one of the key things that makes life phenomenal. Yes. And so we try to support and encourage things in that direction.
And you guys do an amazing job. It is it's not just the products that make your company stand out and make that contribution so big. So everybody, go to neurohacker.com and check it out. And I don't push, I only promote what I know and what I really see make a difference for people. So I would say, check out the products as well, because they are amazing. They're the best you're going to find for sure.
Thank you.
James, thank you so much. You've shared amazing gold with us today.
Thanks for having me. This was great. I really enjoyed it. I'm glad to get to share.
For everyone listening, remember you can get the show notes and transcripts by visiting inspiredliving.show. I hope you had an amazing time and enjoyed this episode as much as I did. I'll see you next week.
Thank you for listening to Julie Michelson's Inspired Living with Autoimmunity. Did you enjoy this episode? Please like, share, and subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. If you'd like to get a transcript of this and every other episode, just head on over to inspiredliving.show or click on the link in this episode's description. There, you can also find everything we discussed in this episode, including links and information about our guest. You can even send in your questions to be answered by Julie in a future episode. That's inspiredliving.show. Until next time, this is Julie Michelson's Inspired Living with Autoimmunity podcast, helping you take your power back.